Welcome to another Untold Stories podcast. And today, I'm really honored to be sitting with a guy who's been very instrumental and very much a part of my young life, especially Tom Greene from Lighthouse Point Custom Rod and Reel. If you don't know that, Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much, Randy. And you know I'm proud. I'm proud to be here.
You know, if you've listened to some of the podcasts, you hear me talk about my story and about how I started my life in wrapping rods as a kid. Tommy Greene was the first person I worked for growing up that I got paid to wrap rods at his shop. And it was an education and a learning curve that I did not realize at the time. But later on in life, when I became that guy, I realized, oh my gosh, all this stuff came from sponging off of you at your shop. And, you know, it was probably 20 years later, but I thank you for that.
Well, no, I loved it. I had fun. You did too. We all did.
Oh, of course.
It was a team effort.
And back then, the stuff we were doing with tackle and just rods and stuff in general, the snook fishing on the bridges and the piers.
Oh, yeah. People today cannot comprehend what we started with, where we went to, and went back to it again. You know, I've told so many, I can tell stories. We could sit here and do this for 48 hours.
Oh, without a doubt.
And not even scratch the surface, okay? But there's, you know, you hit on anything you want to hit on. Give me a question, I'll give you my answer to it and what I believe and why.
Well, you know, kind of one of the things back when we were together doing stuff, as a kid, you know, here I am.
We both were.
16, 17 years old. You know, I got into it because my mom wouldn't spend $200 on a custom rod. You, as a young kid, were wrapping rods as well. You knew how to wrap.
I started at 11 years old.
So you were passionate about, what was it, doing it yourself or the look of it? Because it was.
I wanted to build what I wanted to build and the colors I wanted to build them and the shapes, the angles, the flex of the rod, putting the guides in the right spot. You know, one of the craziest things, and I know we talked about it many years ago. Sam Scott used to come in the store and he's selling rods for Spin Master rods in Miami, Uslan rods, and a couple of those early companies. And every time I picked up a spinning rod or picked up a fishing rod, I would shake it and put my hand into where the reel seat went into the cork or whatever grip it was, and they never built it up so it was solid. It was always loose right there. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And Sam would show up one day with a new rod, and I'd take my fingers and my thumb and shake it. I said, well, it's loose. What are you talking about? Well, the whole industry has had a problem with that forever.
Yeah.
And they'd build it up with cork. They'd build it up with this and masking tape later in life.
Yeah.
But they never built it up strong and solid enough.
Yeah.
So you had that bend in that foregrip.
Well, it's all skilled labor.
Right.
Most of the stuff that's built today is not built with skilled labor. It's somebody, hey, glue these rod butts up, right. Yeah. And they just slide them down. They don't know what a spline is, and they're just trying to get them done as fast as they can.
We'll jump off of that in a second. When you talk about the spline on the rod, 90% of the people in the world didn't know what it was. Okay?
Right.
Gary Loomis with the golf shaft was the first guy ever came along who went to work for Loomis Rods, incorporated that into the fishing rod business. I've been doing it 20 years.
Yeah.
Or more. Yeah. You know it.
Oh, yeah.
But the fisherman knew it. The golfer said, I'm going to hit 10 clubs. The same head, the same shaft. 7 of them hit the ball fairly good. 3 of them you ain't got a prayer of keeping it straight because you hit it on the toe or the heel. The ball goes because of the rod blank not being glued up properly. So that was really a big thing when that was finally figured out, and they kept it quiet. They didn't tell the world. But we were doing it with a fishing rod for 20 years before that.
Well, what that means is it's the natural curve of the rod blank or the golf shaft. So when you're in line and you swing that golf club and you're on the spline and that head of the club hits that ball, you got the most energy and the most power.
It doesn't roll off right or left.
Right. It doesn't want to go back to
Right.
that center, if you will.
And that's how important the spline was.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to tell people that today, and they just look at
They're
me
lost.
like,
They have no idea.
what are you talking about?
The reason every rod blank has a spline is they wrap it in cloth,
Yeah.
graphite or whatever. And wherever it ends up, that particular spline is stronger on one side than it is on the other side, on
Right.
the back side of it.
Wouldn't it be the start and finish of the material when they roll it?
Yeah, it's the same deal. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. It's where how it finishes out.
Yeah.
And what they've done now is they sand these blanks more than they used to.
Yeah.
So the spline changes in the rod itself because it was sanded off.
Yeah.
So built up here, built up there.
So when they're non-sanded, they have a spiral finish, which is a natural finish when they pull the cellophane off the rod.
Right.
And then all of these rods that are smooth are sanded.
Exactly.
And the guy sanding it, it might be a Friday. He wants to get out of there. He's a little bit off on the sanding, going a little too fast. Who knows? But it's altered it.
Yeah.
It, to a point.
Major changes.
Yeah. But it's hard to sell that spiral finish on a rod.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody wanted the
Everyone wants
smooth look.
something smooth.
Yeah. So, I talk a little bit about our snook fishing days, you and George and going to Stewart. And, we were just showing Javier one of the rods that we would use back then. And I'll never forget when we did go one night, you said, we're going to Stewart after work. We're probably not going to be home till late, wee hours of the morning.
Or daylight.
And I'm excited about, going to do this, having no idea how this is going to play out. And you hand me this rod that's 10 feet long.
Or 11.
And it doesn't bend. And I ask you what kind of line's on here, and you go, it's a straight 100. It's all the same, and you're going to tie the hook to the end of it.
Right.
And I'm thinking, holy cow, this is going to be crazy. But you needed the length for the bridge because they
Right.
never bit outside the bridge. They'd always bite under the bridge.
Or just right on the shadow.
And you had to have some power to get this thing out from under the bridge. So the 100-pound was really to keep from fraying off on the piling
Right.
and the bridge.
Right.
And you would get a thump, as we would call them. You told me, you'll know when you get a bite. And I go, well, how am I going to know? He goes, oh, you'll feel the thump. You'll know it. And when I got that first thump, I went, this is it. Now what do I do? And it
But
was
now
just,
the change is when you get that thump today with braid, it's a twice as big a thump.
oh yeah. But I
A
mean,
different world.
yeah. And I don't know that a lot of people fish that way now.
No, I know that, but
like
what
they
I mean
used
is,
to.
That's exactly.
You imagine if we had that back then?
Then I caught between 15 and 20,000 snook.
You
And-
think lifetime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'd had braid, I'd have twice that many.
Yeah.
And I feel I've caught 100 snook over 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And I figure I'd have 250 plus over 30 if I'd had braid all those years.
Yeah. I remember coming home from Stewart with you one night, and I think you had an El Camino,
Yep.
and we're going down the turnpike, and I can remember bump, 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 and then it would stop. And then bump, 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 and it would stop.
You're sitting in the back seat of the front.
No, I was in front with you.
All right.
I think it was just you and I coming home. And we get, and I don't think much about it. And we get home and we're talking about something, and you go, boy, I had a pretty good nap. How was yours? And you were sleeping going down
For
the
20
turnpike.
miles.
Oh, yeah. And
At
all
70 miles an hour.
all the bumping was just to tell you to go back to the right or go back to the left. And I laugh about it now, and,
I should be dead so many times.
oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
they would have probably thought we were drunk.
Right.
But we never had a problem. We never got stopped. We never hit anything, but it was just the things we got away with doing what we did. And, not everybody was that lucky, but
Eric Adams tells the best story when George would be going home and it's 4:30, 5:30 in the morning. We fished one time in our life, 13 days in a row,
yeah.
all night, slept in the store a little bit.
Where would we sleep in the store?
We had the rod wrapping room or the epoxy room or the bathroom.
Right.
Because you get too many guys, we couldn't all sleep in the bathroom.
I would tell people it was music to my ears when you said go take a nap for a few hours in the bathroom.
Yeah. And I was the kind of boss that I knew how tired you were. And I did say, get your ass over there and go over and epoxy those rods. They got to be done
Yeah.
because you couldn't do it. I said, go take a nap, go sleep for an hour or two, and I'll wake you up.
Yep.
How tired are you?
Yep.
So we go there. We all did it.
Yeah.
You go in there and sleep for an hour or two. Get up and everybody. If you're a happy employee, you work better.
Right.
If you're miserable, you feel bad, you don't.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And those are because when the boss is doing the same thing,
Yep.
I've always said there's not one job in this tackle store that I don't do also.
Right.
Whether it's rig mullet, cut mullet, shrimp, whatever it is, I do the same job you do.
Yeah.
And you probably get paid more than I did
Well,
back in those days
I'm sure.
because you got a paycheck every week. But we had fun doing it,
Yeah.
and we're all proud of what we did.
Well, it was exciting. It was just we were all into it. So when you were a kid, how did you get a tackle store? How did that come about? Where you're wrapping rods, you're interested in the tackle business?
It was very simple, right? I was 11 years old on June the 6th of 1959, the last day of school. Bill Kane, who had the Boca Tackle on Pemmican Park Road, his wife went to the doctors for a hysterectomy. He called my mother, it was a Friday, and said, can Tommy help me during the summer? I need help. He dips shrimp, waits on customers, put inventory away. I just need his help. And I will pay him $1.10 an hour is what I'd made the year before, working La Terme Lawn Service. And I don't care what the money was, I was going to work anyway.
Right.
I'd be there for free. So yes, he can, but he can't work on Sundays because we're very strict Southern Baptists and we go to church every Sunday. No problem at all. We won't even open the store on Sunday if that's what you feel. Fine, we did that. So from the very beginning, it was all cut and dried. You go to work every day. We open at 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. You work until 5, 6, 7, 8 at night, whatever the hours were. And we worked. And we did what needed to be done. Nobody in my store back then did something somebody else didn't do, except maybe Bill Kane.
Yeah.
But 3 nights a week, I used to get a little older. I'd take the lapstrake 17-foot boat out of Boca Inlet, and I would take Andy Belisari, some of these boys that all grew up going to my fishing class in the tackle store, and I'd take them out and catch snapper and whatever, and I taught them to do it. That's how we learned to do it.
Right.
But so I learned to fish and boat, and everything we did it individually as a group. It was none me, I. We didn't believe in that stuff. That word didn't exist. I did that. No, we didn't have that. So we spent a lot of hours doing it. Then the other thing we did, driving the Stewart, driving wherever we went fishing, we talked. We asked questions to ourselves. What's your opinion of this? Why did that fish do that? How did you feel that bite? What were you doing when you got that bite? You throw a lure. What color did you throw? Why did you throw that color? And those are the things that we incorporated into our life automatically.
A learning curve.
Yeah, exactly. There used to be a joke at the tackle store. There was a time in our life we were catching the living hell out of snook on Boynton Inlet, throwing a creek shub pikey, number 703, which was a black and white. Okay. They also had a 718, which was more of a silver flash colored. Well, everybody knew you come in a tackle store, you talk to me, and I'd say, you need to take this, the tide is here, fish here. And what I used to, as I got a little older, I used to do is I'd send you to Boynton Inlet.
Right.
I'd send him to Flagler Bridge. I'd send him here, and I'd give each and every one of you a different lure.
Right.
You'd come back, give me a report, and that's how I used the next day.
Right.
Yes, I cheated a little bit.
Ah, you were just networking.
Yeah, networking on more than one occasion. I'd tell a story. I was on Boynton Inlet one night throwing the original Fluger Supreme reel, no drag.
Yeah.
Andy Line came out with black line one year.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I'm throwing black Andy with a black leader because they don't, they can see everything we thought. And I catch 9 snook on 9 consecutive casts from 12 to 20 pounds. The only picture I've ever carried in my wallet, it's still in there to this day.
Right.
I don't open it up. But
That night.
It was a fag purse, but it was, it was they were all caught on this 703 creek jump.
Right.
So now that I collect fishing lures, I have a few of them still.
I'll bet.
Yeah. So, and they were $2.95, not $4.95.
Right.
But
And they were wood.
yeah, they're wood. But everything we've ever done, trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. What do you recommend this? Why do you do this? So when we were riding back and forth to Stewart, where'd you get your bite at? How deep were you? So years and years ago, as you know now, that I invented the throat hook mullet
Yep.
by hooking them across. And that all came from being on Deerfield Pier, Lake Worth Pier, the other piers. You take a pilchard, snooker laying out on the bottom, away from the pier. You throw it out there, you keep tension on them. The bait goes upside down, digging to go to the bottom. Snook comes up and sees me. First thing you release that tension, that fish goes hell bent for the service. They run him down and catch him and eat him.
Yeah.
And that's how that started. But we learned by doing it. When I started, you're on Palmetto Park Bridge. There's 15 guys, 12 guys on the bridge. 90% of them are throwing a Nylure 105 white feather, throwing it up current on the outgoing tide, and they're bouncing the bottom. And it was not uncommon to see 20, 30, 40 snook laying on that bridge.
Wow.
But most of them were smaller fish. The mullet would come through the bridge, and these big snook under the span would just hell bent over. They're going to eat those mullet because they're a bigger bait.
Right.
But we didn't have the cast net. We didn't have the know how. I mean, I couldn't even get over top of the rail. I'd fish through the rail at times and snook fish that way. But by the end of it, I throw hook my mullet. I got him on a 10-foot rod. I got him on a 100-pound line. And I see the fish laying there. I told somebody the other day, and they laughed at me, "Did you really do that?" I said, yeah. I can remember a time you fish a mullet, 5 guys there, and you can't get a bite. You might get a bite. But as soon as a wad of mullet come through there, they'd blow it up and they'd all eat it.
Yeah.
So I remember at one time in my life, how can I get more bait in the water at once? So I take my line and I tie it to my swivel. I take 6 mullet and I take 6 leaders, 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot, with a mullet on each one, sling it up. And I had 5 or 6 mullet coming back to the bridge at one time. I get a thump. I don't care which one he ate. And I set the hook. I caught a couple of doubles.
Right.
But I incorporated this, okay?
Yeah, you figured out the daisy chain.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
But that's what I was doing.
All right.
How do we make a bite?
Right.
All right, we get to Brazil with Andy Bean. Originally, I did this, say, 20, 25 years ago. We're throwing a surface plug, and these fish come up and just blow the shit out.
These are the big giant peacocks.
Big giant peacocks. And I got the leader of, everything's still the same, but I would take a piece of short 40-pound, 50-pound, 60-pound leader material, tie my uni knot in reverse to where it comes off the leader, and I'd take a feather, like a fly rod feather,
Right.
and the yellow one was the best color, and I would tie that fly up above my bimming and my knots. And first day I was there with Andy Bean on the boat, and he said, "What are you doing there?" He said, "Well, you catching all the fish." And I said, "Yeah, I've caught 7. You haven't caught 1.
Huh.
And all it amounted to was that they were eating my fly. Okay? They come up to see the lure, and here's a fly under the surface,
Right.
and they swim over and grab it. But the crazy thing was, we'd hook a 5-6 pounder, and all of a sudden a 20 pounder would eat the fly, and you got a 5 pounder
Nice.
skipping on the surface. It was a great. We had it happen more once. I did the same thing in the spillway with Snook.
Right.
I probably, as much as I love bridge fishing, I love the spillway fishing more.
Yeah, you did a lot of that, I know.
Because I caught fish.
Yeah.
I was in,
Do those spillways still, can you get to them?
yeah, most of them are by boat anymore.
Yeah.
But you can get to them and the fish are there.
But like
Always.
60-second, you can still get to there?
They're there and they bite.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Here I am, the fish in the water looking up. Bait comes to the spillway, 50% of them are stunned already.
Right.
They go down, and I'm picking cherries.
Yeah.
That's what I am, the fish in the water.
Right.
This is what I see, and this is how I see it.
Yeah.
Now, the other story I used to tell like that was we all used to throw trout out, jigs,
Yep.
feathers,
Yep.
whatever we threw. Throw it up in there, let it sink just a little bit, and you want to get it down as close to the bottom as you can. And I'm sitting there one day, and I'm making a cast. I caught 2 or 3 fish, and they shut off or whatever. So I'm fishing with a guy named Jerry Girardi and Tom Ryan, the guide.
Right.
He owned the boat, the Guiding Light.
Right.
Long story, a long time ago. But we had a customer on the boat that was a charter for him, and we'd given that guy some brim, some shad, and some live bait, put a cork on it, float out behind the back of the boat, and he was catching 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pound snook as fast as he put the bait in the water. Well, we wanted 20, 30 pounders down deep on the bottom in the racing current.
Right.
And we had caught and released that day. There were 4 boats side by side. Every boat had 10 or 15 fish. And we had a real good morning going. Well, it got to be almost 11 o'clock. And what it actually was dead high tide. Fish shut off. They move out, they say. You got to quit biting totally. And I had told the guy, I said, next time one of those baits die, just leave it on the top of that live well. These are the, remember the 75 big white ones that we had? So he just laid it there. I didn't say a single word to anybody. I reached over, took my tail off, and I put a brim on my hook, come up underneath, right to the head, come right out the top, throw that in there, let it sink, and walk it out. Boom! I catch 20-pound snook. I catch 4 20-pound snook on 4 baits and 4 casts.
Dead brim.
Dead brim. Yeah. Everybody said, what are you doing? Nothing. What'd you just throw up there? Your trout out. No, you didn't. I saw it. So I catch 4 fish. There's the same 8, 9, 10 guys fishing.
Oh, yeah.
With the same lure. Nobody had a bite for 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah. No, presentation. I've had that happen
There's an
before.
article in the other room written that day by Jerry Girardi in one of the fishing magazines, and it tells a story just like that.
Right.
And but you fish through the fish's eye.
Yeah.
What does the fish on the bottom see?
Right.
The other scenario
They didn't go anywhere.
Right. The other scenario there is if you work your lure like this, they don't get excited. But if you work your lure like this, they'll reach up and grab it.
Right.
All right? Same deal.
Yeah. They'll get aggressive on it.
Exactly what it was.
So when did you take over the tackle shop? How did that happen?
Well, I worked for Bill Kane until I was graduated high school, 17, 18 years old. And a man by the name of Joe Stetson, who owned a boat, charter boat called Miss Lisa. And it was in the Boca Hotel and Club that was chartering that. And I was working for Joe Stetson. We had another boy by the name of Colby Mims, C-O-L-B-Y Mims, whose father was with IBM. Colby went to work for IBM afterwards. And him and I got the idea we're going to open our own tackle store because we weren't happy.
Oh, okay.
So A, B, and C, D of the whole story is that I went up and talked to the people that owned a piece of property up the street, just off US 1. We had a man by the name of Ted Fiddler. I couldn't remember that name if I tried. Who was a very wealthy man out of Detroit. And he said, I'll give you whatever money you need. And we'll buy you build you a tackle store.
To a young kid, just
20, I wouldn't need 21. To a young kid.
Yeah.
But he respected me. One thing you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, Joe Stetson comes back to me and says, we got a problem here, and we understand you're trying to open your own store, and you're fired. So he fired me that day. And I wasn't really worried until I went back and talked to the other guy and says, no, we decided we're not going to rent you the store. Oh. He had already bought my lease out for $10,000 over and above what I had. And I was on my ass on the ground.
Wow.
I left there and I went down to Pompano Beach. And there was a fisherman back then by the name of Bobby Powers. And I couldn't tell you that name for $1 million bucks.
Right.
Bobby Powers. Bobby Powers worked on the charter boats and drift boats and all that type of stuff, tuna boats, and he wanted to build a tackle store.
Wow.
And he had a little money, I'm saying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000.
Right.
And we built that tackle store right where Houston's is today.
On the Intercoastal?
On the Intercoastal.
Wow.
So live shrimp and all that. Well, that didn't go over real big, but anyway, we did that first. The next tackle store I got involved with a guy named Newt Petty. Remember that name? Mm-mm. Newt Petty had a Hillsborough Bait and Tackle. He had a little tackle store.
Okay, I remember that.
Right? And I went out west, and we had 2 tackle stores at the same time. I ran one, he ran the other one. We fought like cats and dogs. I'm a kid, he's an adult.
You were still wrapping rods?
Oh, I was wrapping. Everything I was doing was still the same.
Yeah.
But at that particular time, I called Newt up one day. I said, I need a cast net for a customer. Okay, send him over. No, I said, I already got his money. I just need to we buy the nets from the same guy, whoever. He wouldn't even sell me a cast net to sell to my customer to go back into our bank account. True story.
What does that tell you?
All right. And then the next time we tried to do it, they didn't have a rope on it. So he'd already sold the rope off the net.
Oh, geez.
And it did the same thing. So this wouldn't work out. So I borrowed some money from one of my customers, a man and his wife that were, I bowled with the guy, in fact. And I think I got 15 or 20 or 25,000. And we started Tom Greene's Tackle Shop. Still got pictures today on the overhead.
And where was that at?
That was right there in the same store. That was out west on the old Hillsborough Bait and Tackle.
Okay.
Right there by Pop's Fish Market.
Okay.
But it said Tom Greene's Tackle Shop on the outside.
Right. So you finally got your own store.
So I finally got my own store. Well, then the city of Deerfield Beach decided they were going to help me out because that was a 2-lane road, one each way. They come in there and bulldozed it down and made it an 8-lane road. But it took them 2 years to do it. So when somebody started driving by slow, we'd stand out front on the main road, take them around the back of the tackle store, and you came in the back door. That's the only way you could get inside.
Right.
Because the parking lot was a mess, and it was hard. It was a hard time.
And the city didn't help you with anything?
Nobody helped us anything. So at the end of 2 more years of that, I gave the money back to the woman's name was Sue Berry. The husband had died of prostate cancer, and she turned around and sold it to, I guess it was, I don't know who bought it first, but the people that owned Jonah's, that group of people bought the store.
Right.
In the meantime, I turned around and went back to Bill Kane called me and said, let's reopen Boca Tackle.
Wow.
Right? I said, okay, fine. Well, Bill had been running it with his daughter and his wife a little bit, but he sold it out to a guy by the name of Chuck Stanwyck. And he didn't like Chuck. Chuck didn't like Bill Kane.
Oh, wow. And you're walking into this.
And so I walked right back into his tackle store.
Right.
And I'm going to run that. And we started with 30, 40, or 50,000. Whatever the number was, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's all we had.
Yeah.
And I worked for 100 hours a week for about $100.
Wow.
Yeah. And 3 of those nights of every week I went snapper fishing. We had a fish market up front.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We sold fish. We did the whole gamut. Chuck Stanwyck said, I'll fix this deal. He goes next door. There's an old house there. He rented the old house and started Boca Tackle in that house.
Oh, wow.
We went back to our house and called it the Tackle Box.
Right.
I ain't told this story in a long time. So it was the Tackle Box.
Right. This was in Boca.
In Boca.
Yeah.
Same location.
Yeah.
451 East Palmetto Park Road.
All right.
And we ran that for 3 or 4 or 5 years, like 3 or 4 years. At the end of 4 years, I'm still working for $100 a week.
Wow.
I'm bowling.
Right. You had a hell of a bowling career, speaking of that. How many perfect games did you bowl?
I thought a dozen or more. I mean, I bowled
a dozen or more.
Yeah.
That's 13 strikes in a row?
12.
12.
Yeah. I got most everything was 18, but it's immaterial there.
Yeah, but that's a pretty big achievement considering.
Well, we were fishing all night and bowling, bowling at night and all this stuff. But
Right. You could have been a pro bowler, making some real money.
there's right there, there's 3 trophies.
Yeah, I see them.
All right. The one in the middle says I beat Jim Godman in 1973, head-to-head, a 3-game match. I averaged 258 a game for 3 games.
Wow.
What we did was we took the top bowlers in South Florida, 10 of us, and we bowled at 7 o'clock, a 4-game match, and I won that, averaged about 240. And back then, nobody bowled. A high average in a house was 190.
Yeah.
So there was no such thing as a 200 average bowler.
Right.
So I started, bowl that way, and then one thing led to another. And that particular night, at Jim Godwin, his second or third game, he bowled a 290. He had just won the PBA Tour the week or 2 weeks before, and he says, "I will sponsor you on tour for 2 years, pay all your expenses. I want 50% of your prize money, and at the end of 2 years, you're on your own. You're paid off."
Wow.
Well, at that time, I was maybe 21, 22. My father was blind. My mother was sick. I had Martin, Kenny, and Nancy at home. The other family members had run away. They got married and ran out of the house. And we had no money.
Right.
At a house, we bought a house for $14,950 in Boca on US 1.
Wow.
House payment was $99.10 a month. No, $99.10 a month.
Wow.
I paid all the bills out of Boca Tackle and my bowling. And that's the way we lived.
Wow.
So I went back to Godwin. I said, "Jim, I'd love to, but I can't walk away from my family."
Right.
And he says, "I respect that." So I didn't quit bowling. I still bowled every week, and I bowled 5, 6, 7 nights a week.
All right. You just didn't tour.
Yeah, I didn't go on tour.
Yeah.
But I bowled every tournament I could bowl.
Yeah.
And, I bowled a lot.
Yeah.
But it kept me out of trouble and off the streets.
Right. Well,
I mean, as a 60-year-old, 70-year-old man today, I can sit right here and tell you to your face, I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never smoked a joint. I've never taken a pill more than a pain pill for my knees that I tore up. But I knew better
yeah.
because I saw what it did to all my friends.
Right.
And that's what it did.
Yeah. Oh no, it was. I, without a doubt, I believe my life would be totally different had I not
Worked for me.
Well, worked for you
yeah.
and wrapping fishing rods.
Right.
The fishing rods, the fishing, the baseball kept me out of a lot of stuff growing up, and I'm grateful for it. And same with you. You had some passion.
I got to play baseball, Boca High basketball, and the only reason I could play baseball in those sports is I didn't have to go to practice because we were good enough. When I wrote my first book here, a customer came in the store one day, and I can't remember his name. I want to say Godwin, but it's not. And he's got a picture it's on my phone, in fact, of 10 or 11 guys, Boca Raton, firefighters, whatever the name of the team was. And he says, "You recognize me?" And he's about 6'4", tall, thin guy. I said, "Yeah, you're my coach in Little League." He said, "You're right." Well, not Don Kaler, but Jordan Smith is standing because Jordan played baseball. He says, "What position did you play?" And the guy said, "We played everything." But, well, who was the pitcher? He says, "He was." All right, well, who else was the pitcher? He was.
Right.
So
he meaning you.
Me. I pitched every game.
Yeah.
We didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. So I played first and I played left field a bit. And my father, this is the story I love, but my father lived in Augusta, Georgia, and he played ball. His nickname growing up was Bulldog Greene. He was 6'3", like 245, born in the 1900s, early. His next door neighbor that he ate more meals with than he did his own mother's house was Ty Cobb.
Wow.
Yeah. So Daddy played with Ty Cobb.
Wow.
And his mother would not let him go play pro ball because those ball players were drinking, smoking, cussing,
chasing women,
bad guys chasing women, and he was not allowed to do that. So he let me do it, to a degree, but he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to throw a baseball. So I can remember still to this day in our house in Boca, or at that time, with a peach basket with the rags, the carpet, the piece of a mattress into that with 100 balls, and I could not go in and have dinner or go do anything until I hit 100 in a row, almost in a row. I had to throw into that basket and then fall on the ground. But I did that every night.
Right.
For many, 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 many years.
Isn't that ironic that you had the baseball passion, wrapping rods, tackle shop?
Same as you did.
I mean, I'm right there.
Yeah.
In doing the same thing. And I didn't. Growing up, I thought I was going to play baseball. I didn't know I was going to have.
Well, I was on Pembina Park Road, right where the ball field was. We lived in garden apartments there. My father took care of the refrigeration, the air conditioning, which there was not much of, for free rent. And we had 7 kids. We knocked a hole in the apartment between them. And I believe back in those days, rent for an apartment was $45 or $50 a month.
Wow.
So that's what he was paid to take care of that. And we knocked a hole just like that in between, and that's where we lived.
Wow.
That's where I grew up. But
so now you got the tackle shop.
Right.
And you got your own shop, and you're getting it going. What year was this?
Let me figure this out now.
So
what I did was after that, I guess we had that tackle store. Exactly what happened. That's a good story, right? So now I'm with Bill Kane, 3 years, 4 years. At the end of 3 years, 4 years, when the inventory reached like $80,000. I think we started with 40. And Bill Kane said, when the inventory reaches $40,000, because that's profit we've made, you get half of the store. Okay, that's fine. Because I have any money in the game, and just hard work and
sweat
labor.
Equity.
So I busted my ass badly. Bill was not coming in as much. His daughter, Sue Kane, did come in and help me, ran the fish market part of it. And we did everything, every day, all day.
Right.
And if I had to stay to 2 o'clock in the morning to finish a set of rods to take it to Joe Blow in Palm Beach and whoever, I stayed there and did it.
Yeah.
If I had to clean every reel and go repair. A prime example of that was we had a customer, and Scott Itch was my mate at the time. Like 13 or 14, Scott was.
Yeah.
And he's, to me, one of the world's top 10 fishermen in the world.
Oh, yeah.
All right? And he was fishing with a man in Boca for the Stewart Lake Tackle Sailfish Tournament. I'll think of a name in a minute. And 20-pound test, barbless hooks, tournament line. At the last minute, his wife was the angler. She got sick, and she couldn't fish. He came to me and says, "Can you fish?" And I go to Bill Kane. I said, "Can I have off?" And this was the same year, you go back and check the years, the same year when there was a total gas crisis. When before you were born, probably you lined up at a gas station for 4 hours and hope you could keep your car running, or you pushed it to get gas. Well, that year they only had 3 days of fishing with a boat.
And this was here in Palm Beach?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was Palm Beach. It was actually out of Stewart. It was actually the forerunner of the Stewart Lake Tackle Tournament.
Okay.
That's what it was. And Sam Jennings.
Yeah.
All right, that group of guys. We had a guy by the name of Dick Freiberg that made the toys. Some of these are some old names and old people.
Yeah.
So we get up there, and Scott and I, we got to go catch bait to go fishing with. First of all, everybody else in the tournament, they had Penn Internationals. There was only a few of those. They had small Finors, 2.5 O's or whatever they had, and they had fancy gold reels. The reels we had a Penn 4.0 that I took apart and put a white Teflon drag in them.
All right.
when they first started.
Yeah.
And that was my reel. So we filled the reel with lime. We get up there. The first night, we're out there catching bait on the flats in Stewart, and it was cold. And I'll tell you how cold it was. In the morning, we got up. There's a mop or whatever in the bucket, and you picked it up, and the ice was still on the mop. It was in the 30 days, one of those days. Right. The other thing it was, I used to get seasick every time I got in the boat.
Right.
I mean, sicker than a dog. Well, you're fishing off, back then was 11A or 12A off Stewart. And the ground swells and the waves, and it was cold. You're trolling down sea, and the water would fall in the cockpit. Green water about this high.
Yeah.
You're scared to death you're going to drown, number one.
Yeah.
You're too scared to be seasick.
Right.
And we're fishing with ballyhoo and finger mullet. And we would catch the mullet at night with the cast net. We didn't know what a daisy chain was back then.
Right.
So we didn't have daisy chains and all that stuff. And we literally caught our own bait, rigged our own bait, right there in the boat, and that's how we fished every night. Well, at the last day of the tournament, Ken Sharp was his name, okay? Ken Sharp, screaming at me. I got a bonita on. We catch a bonita about $1 million. Bring him off, bring him off, bring him off. There's one greyhound right here. There's a sailfish. So he wants to turn off of what I'm on and get to that sailfish.
Right.
I wouldn't break him off. He's screaming at the top of his lung. Scott says, don't break it, don't break it. Well, 3 seconds later, here's a sailfish. Comes right up on the side of the boat, jumping. It was on my hook.
Wow.
Yeah. So I tell that story 1 million times, but you don't break them off till you know what you got for sure.
100%.
You got the bite, you hooked the fish, you caught him. So at the end of that day, the end of that tournament, we won.
Right.
By one fish. And they put us up on the stage. It was myself, Sam Jennings, and one other guy, whoever it is. And they said, well, you know, what was your opinion on these fish? Hard to hook? Did you break many lines? Did you jump a lot of them off? Did you pull the hook? And I said, I probably shouldn't tell this story. Well, what's the story? I says, up until today, I'd never caught a sailfish in the last 3 days.
Holy cow.
In my life.
Right.
I'd been on a boat where, you know, the mate helped out, but I'd never caught one, never went one in my life. I said, they're a lot easier to catch than a snook or a tarpon. I mean, they just swim up behind and eat it. You drop back to them, you hook them, you fight them.
Right.
And that's exactly what I said. That created a little
I'll bet it
excitement. But that was my first tournament ever. And that's exactly how it went down.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think we caught 11 or 12 or 13. It doesn't matter. But anyway, we caught enough to win.
Right.
So
that's awesome.
So from there, I go back to Boca Tackle again. I had a customer by the name of Ed King. You probably remember the name.
I remember.
Ed King on the
Kingfisher.
Kingfisher.
Yeah.
Hatteras called the Kingfisher.
Yeah.
He had a captain by the name of Tommy Yacht.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Tommy Yacht, I still have pictures today. We were both 11 and 12 years old, playing baseball together at the same baseball team in Little League.
Yeah.
Still have those pictures today. So he was T.O. and I was T.G. That's why I still have my ring today of Tom Greene. His wife bought them for us both when we were about 18, 19, 20 years old. And we still wear them to this day. Just that crazy.
Yeah.
But I borrowed the money and I went to Ed King and I said, Eddie, I've got a guy that wants to loan me the money to open a tackle store. He said, yeah. How much is he going to give you? I said, well, he owns a big gun shop up north. She's going to give me some in guns and ammunition and knives, but about $250,000. He said, what do you have now? I said, nothing. He said, how you going to pay him back? I said, I got to make a profit and pay off that. I paid him back $25.08.42 a month for about 20 years.
Wow.
Every week. And there was a lot of days there.
Every week?
Every month.
Yeah.
A lot of days there. I had no money, period, to make that payment, but I still never missed one a day late, never bounced a check, and I paid him back every penny. In my drawer in my office, and it's still somewhere in this house, I've got a wad of checks. Big.
Canceled checks.
No, they're not canceled. A wad of checks that big around with my paychecks, Tom Greene.
Ah, that you never cashed.
That I never cashed my paychecks.
Wow.
Because I had to have the money to pay the bills.
Sure.
George Copeland worked for me. Every one of my kids that ever worked for me never waited a day for a paycheck, never had to hold them for a paycheck, and never bounced a paycheck. And I've written millions of dollars of paychecks.
Oh, yeah.
Millions.
Yeah.
And you just saw my accountant leave right there.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. But I still paid everybody. In the industry, and I'll guarantee you can ask today, I used to get all my products, all my inventory, all my goods, because I paid my bills first.
Yeah.
And all my providers, they never complained and never yelled. I begged and cried some days, but I still paid them.
Yeah. Well, that was good business for them.
Well, that's what it was.
And they wanted to work with you because they knew, you were going to pay them.
That's right. And that's what it was.
That's still a huge thing today.
Yep. Well, remember when you came to me and said, I'm going to open a tackle store?
Oh,
I said, Randy, do not. Do not. Randy, do not. Because things have changed. It's harder to do. Well, I got my daughter's going to do this. I said, do not do it. I mean, the way I remember the story, you tell the story, is a good way to put it on film. You were working in your tackle store there, right in Alamorada, right on the main drag, big, beautiful. And I didn't know that much about fly fishing. You were fly guiding and fishing and taking all these guys tarpon fishing. Great clientele. And the guy walks in your store that day and looked at you and says, boy, this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life. Yep, a lot of hard work. He said, you ever thought about selling? You look at him, yeah, I have. He says, would you sell it? He said, for the right price. The guy says, well, I'll give you X. So you said, I'll take X. And the guy says, hang on a second. He walked out in his car, got his check back, book, he came back in, wrote you out a check,
100%.
paid for it 100%, no questions asked. You call your wife and say, where you at? She said, I'm home. I got a surprise for you. You go straight home, lay it on the table.
Oh, yeah.
You paid off your loan on your house,
Pretty much how it went.
paid off your loan on your business, paid off everybody you owed money,
Bought a new house.
and bought a new house.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Plantation Key.
Yeah. And called you.
Yeah.
And
told
thanked
me.
you for an education I
Right.
didn't realize I got.
Right. I remember it very well.
Yeah. That was 1993. Yeah.
203, 13, 23. It's a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I did that, moving to the Keys, moving down there with Oz Keggy, the charter boat guy out of ADOC,
Right?
I was going down there I knew I could do something. It seemed like a cool place. I'd been there a bunch of times. And, the rod business is what has always made things work for me.
Well, the only difference, we'll talk about the rod business now. It's probably a good time. The rod business, we were well educated because we taught ourselves. We picked brains.
Yeah.
And a guy came in and said, why do you want this or this? You could sit there without, as I told my employees all their life, never tell a customer you don't know something. You find out.
Yeah.
Never give him a question that he can go ask somebody else. You don't want to lose him because he's already talking to you.
Yeah.
So, and I told you this many times back then. So we learned the type of rod we needed for the application we were doing. If I want to turn a Jack Crevelle's head, I'm going to turn the rod this way. I'm not going to lift him this way. All right? So we knew that we had to back in the ass and the rod to move that fish. If you want to throw a heavy sinker, you don't have to throw it with a light tip. You throw it with a heavier tip. Would cut the rod blank off. Those guys from California came in, talking to me years ago with the Fenwicks and all this stuff. And they had those buggy whip rods. And they look at me. First thing I do is I bend that rod and I reach up my thumb and break it off. What did you do that for? Because it's a piece of shit.
Right?
All right? A prime example was Mark Sosa was in the tackle store one day, and I used to build a lot of his first rods
Right.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Nobody knew it. And never said a word, never complained about nothing. And one day he's coming down, he loved to come down and have lunch and just sit in the chairs. That was his favorite thing in life.
Well, just real quick. I met Mark in your shop when I was a kid.
Right,
Fast forward
right,
10, 15 years in the Keys, I'm doing TV shows on the Saltwater Journal with
right.
him.
Yep.
And how that would have never happened had I not worked for you in that time and gotten to the Keys, had that relationship. He reached out to me, would you do this? Actually, I think I was a camera boat for one.
Right.
And then after that, we did a couple of shows together. But, a great moment in my life to have that opportunity would have never come had I not.
It came right from that. But anyway,
school.
real fast story. I built Mark a rod, and most people don't know this. You built him some too, I'm sure. We used single-foot guides, and the last guide was wrapped.
That's the tip top.
That was his tip top.
Yeah.
So he's got a rod. We had breakfast, and I went over to his car, and he got me 3 or 4 rods. He said, yeah, this one needs a new tip on it because it's broken off or whatever. So we got to the car. I handed him the rod back. He said, no, you need to fix that one. I said, for what? He says, I need a tip on it. I handed him a rod. He's got 4 rods in his hand. He's looking at him. He knows damn well he handed me a rod with a no tip on it,
right,
broken. All I did was I reached down to the first guide, put my thumbnail around the backside, and broke it. As we walked across the parking lot, I shortened the rod that much, and his tip was already there. He had no idea in the world I did it until he said, no, you got to put a tip on it. I said, I did. No, you didn't. He really thought about that a lot later.
Oh, I'm sure.
But that's all it was.
Yeah.
I remember going down, we go down to, which I looked, some of the greatest fishing. People say, where's the best fishing you ever had in your life? Venezuela.
Boy, that was some
and
good
Brazil.
fishing down there.
The way I ended up in Venezuela was I had about 8 or 10 or 12 customers, the Venezuelans.
Yeah.
And I went down, they invited me. There were 2 brothers, they were world famous, to come down and be on their team. There was a Venezuelan team.
Right. That was
fishermen.
the billfish tournament they did down there.
And it was 12-pound test. Barbless, the whole bit, the 12-pound line. So we get down there, and I got 3 or 4 rods with me. I flew down with Joe Munson. He had a Sabre at the time, and Jeff Maggio.
Yeah, I remember Jeff.
Jeff Maggio at that time was selling all of the original strikers to the Venezuelans, and that's where they are, the Chris-Crafts,
right,
originally before the strikers. And we get down there, and we're going to go fish the next morning. And they just had dinner with him that night, meeting at the boat, La Coco, whatever the name was. These guys were so crazy. They had 2 boats that were identical. One was a family boat, and the other was a fishing boat. And La Coco was the name of that. You go in the boat, you hardly had any floors in the boat. You had no refrigeration in the boat. You had nothing in the boat for weight. They'd take it all out. No couches, no whatevers. It was bare bone, empty boat. So you get in the boat and run as fast as you got 27 knots instead of 22 knots.
Right.
And that was the fishing boat. So we get down there, and I'd been there all morning, walked over there, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I don't speak a word of Spanish. The guys aren't there. And I know we're on the right boat. I know we're at the dock. We're not on the boat.
Right.
And they got some Venezuelan people, some mates around there. Well, these guys finally showed up and said, what are you doing it so early? Well, you said in the morning. I said, it's almost 12 o'clock. Well, they don't bite till the afternoon. Am I right?
Yeah.
So
okay.
We sit there, we get on the boat, we go out of the cut, we go left. Where are we going now? We go down, there's a place to fuel up, and it looked like to me, an old firehouse with a lighthouse in the shape of whatever the place was there. Pull in the dock and tie up. Well, they all go to lunch.
It's 12 o'clock.
So we go in there, we have lunch, we leave, finally get out of there at 1:30. We're going offshore. And we're going in, we're going in, we're going in 27-knot boat because we had the fast boat that day. We start to see birds. I come back and I told Berkey Garnsey this and like 10 captains this. I said, never in a million years did I believe what I was seeing. And they're trying to explain to me in broken Spanish.
Right.
And I look, and you've got a a volume of birds like this, 500 in each one,
Oh, wow.
a funnel.
Right.
And they're going down and they're picking the bait off the surface because the sailfish and the white marlin have got them all schooled up.
Yeah.
And there's 300 of these bird flights, 300 of these pods of bait fish,
Holy cow.
300 of these with 50 or 100 fish in every one of them.
Wow.
And it's a sight I couldn't even comprehend telling people.
Were there other boats there?
Very few.
Yeah.
But it was a tournament that week, so they were out practicing. So we get in there, and they throw the baits over. You troll 40 feet. You got 4 bites. You get 4 fish on.
Wow.
Get them up. 4 bites, 4 bites. We catch 50 fish.
Wow.
2 hours
Wow.
on 12 pound.
Right.
And sailfish, white marlin, the whole bit. And the thing that we hated is if you fought a white marlin for more than 3 minutes, he'd go down.
And if he went down,
You got an hour fight.
yep.
I'd break them off.
Yeah.
Whatever, we did.
Yeah.
We don't say we did, but we did.
Yeah.
And we caught the living shit out of fish.
Yeah.
So the way they set the tournament up was just 3 anglers, all right? And you never fished with your buddy. You're an observer for the other 2 anglers on your boat.
Mm-hmm.
So we won, and I've got the trophy somewhere. My mother didn't throw it away. It was a plaque. We won 2nd place in that tournament. And to this day, I can't find that trophy. And just like that, when I found that, when I moved in this house, I was the happiest guy in the world.
Yeah.
To find those put away in a box wrapped in newspaper.
Yeah.
But we won 2nd place in that tournament out of 50 boats.
Didn't they fish late? Wasn't that tournament like a late? Because they did bite better in the afternoon.
Oh, no, you didn't start till 1 o'clock and you fished to dark.
Yeah, because a lot of the pictures of boats coming in and with the flags and everything was always in the dark.
Well, the other thing about that story, which is not for everybody to understand, but it was very dangerous coming in because on more than one occasion, whether it was an American boat or a Venezuelan boat, they went right up over top of one of these little Venezuelan boats
Oh boy.
and killed a couple people.
Oh boy.
It was a bad deal.
Yeah.
So everybody was real strict about where we're fishing. And the Venezuelans learned real fast that they would monitor us, GPS, whatever piece of equipment we had, so they knew where we were in the afternoon, because that's where the body of fish were.
Right.
Well, those guys would come out and run. You'd pass them going out, and they'd run right to where you were. They'd fish all night. In the morning, they'd turn around and come back home, and you'd pass them both ways. And that was really how it was done.
Wow. And these were the commercial local guys
Those are
that would
local
do that.
commercial guys.
Yeah. So with the
I mean,
tackle,
I passed a wooden boat with 4 guys in it, and they're hooping and hollering, and look, they got 40 dead sailfish, white marlin in that boat with tails everywhere.
oh, I believe it.
We didn't kill a fish. I never killed a fish in Venezuela, to my knowledge, that I can remember in my life. Maybe for a world record or something. Barking them caught. Stuart Campbell was fishing.
Yeah.
Caught a few world records like that.
Yeah. So when did Munson come into play in the tackle shop? And was that when you moved to Lighthouse Point?
So what happened there was, after I was with Bill Kane, paid that off, got that whole deal. Bill was going to give me half the store. Exactly what happened.
Right.
And he backed out.
Again.
Well, he backed out that day, and Susan told me he was going to. His attorney told me he was going to, and I was left holding nothing. His wife Joyce and all that. All right, and I was really upset because I called 90% of the customers thought Bill was my father and Mary and his wife was my mother. Okay, 90% of the customers.
Wow.
And I called mom and dad all my life. All right, and he said, well, you misunderstood when we talked about the split. I said, okay, fine. I said, you can take everything I've got, take all my rod and reels, take all my money, take everything I've got, but you can't take what's here or here.
Yeah.
And I called, Joe Munson was a customer at that time who had a 44 striker. And he was And he had a big gun shop up north and some other businesses he had. And he says, I want to open a tackle store with you. I'll sponsor you. But here's the way we're going to do it. And at that time, I'd probably never been on a plane more than once or twice in my life.
All right.
We flew to Indianapolis, Indiana.
Is that where he was from?
That's where he was from.
All right.
And I remember it was the first time I'd ever seen visually that I could touch snow plows on the road. And the road was white, fields were white with snow. And there was these green snow plows, about millions everywhere.
Huh.
So we got to the airport, went to town, come back. He had a gun shop, and the address was 9 North Ritter Avenue in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Right.
And it was called Joseph Munson Company, Inc.
Oh, wow.
Right? So he had a very large gun shop, knives, he had no fishing tackle, and all this stuff. And it was just like walking to Abercrombie and Fitch.
Wow.
All beautiful wood cases, laid out first class. His wife was real good that way. And it was a beautiful business. It was a super high-end Bass Pro Shop.
All right.
And that had to be in the early 70s.
Right.
Like 2, 3, 4. Okay? And I was just 21, 22, 23. So, okay, fine. He says, this is what I want to open up. Okay? Before we left to go north that day, my brother flew to Indiana also, came by, well, a day or two later, came by the gun shop. And Bill Kane put together, or Joe Munson put together some hunting stuff, some guns, ammo, pistols, all that, showcases. He stopped in North Carolina at, back then was Henry's Tackle. This is before it was called like White's Tackle, whatever it was called. He went there, and I had written an inventory from one of their tackle catalogs. And he stopped at 3 different tackle wholesalers and brought with him all my fishing tackle, all of my inventory, all of my guns. He stopped in South Carolina and bought like 8 showcases. He bought, back then they were gun racks, which we made fishing rod racks in the store. I had a customer by the name of, he owned ran a company called Nova Carpets. And he came in, and we had found a place to rent the whole bit before I left town. And I rented a tackle store on US 1 in Boca, next door to the Clock Restaurant.
So you still weren't in Lighthouse Point yet?
No. So we opened the store there. Stayed there 3 years. My brother came back to the tackle store. Never forget, we're all waiting on him to drive up. And he's driving a big truck with the overhang. And he came all the way back. And Scott Hitch is riding with him. And Scott's like 13, 14, 15 years old.
Right.
They pulled in front of the tackle store. Here comes Ross on the truck. We're all there and excited. And I got pictures of it this day. He drives in underneath the overhead and takes out the overhead on the side of the building. I mean, they did some damage to the truck. I mean, it was just, that's the way it started.
Right. And that was custom rod and gun.
It was custom rod and gun.
Right.
After we got that open, that was just the way it was. Less than 30 days later, here comes Bill Kane's wife. Okay? And she wanted to talk to me. She came inside and sat down. And she said, well, Bill decided that we made a mistake. We want to give you half the store. And we want you to come back and run it. You've already paid for it. You've already earned it. We were wrong. You were right. I said, Joyce, it's like this. I appreciate the education. I appreciate the opportunity. But I've got something going here. And we had a big tackle store in Boca. It was the only store.
Yeah.
So I told her no. She said, yeah, but it don't cost you a penny. And you know how much business we do. and you'll be fine. You'll keep the business. I said, I listened to this man right here, and he gave me the same deal. He didn't charge me a dime. And all I got to do is pay him back, and I will pay him back the same way. So that's how I started with Joe Munson.
Right.
Just that simple.
Wow. And she just finally went away forever?
They both want to. The crazy thing about that whole part of going away is Bill Kane at a later date had to come into my store to deliver me inventory from Sam Scott.
Right.
3 or 4 years later.
Yeah.
And it made me feel real good. I wasn't happy.
I bet it did.
Yeah. Because, I earned the store. I had the store.
Absolutely.
But I wasn't going to do it that way.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to screw somebody else.
Yeah.
So.
And then how did you end up in Lighthouse Point?
Bill Kane, Joe Munson owned a house right down the street.
Right.
On 25th, 28th Street.
Yeah.
He had the first big fancy house in Lighthouse Point.
All right.
And a buddy of mine, Harvey Scheller,
Yeah.
that fished with us in the whole bit, he was in the construction industry, and he went out and built a house like that for Joe Munson because he loved to fish, and that was the first 2-story house in Lighthouse Point.
All right.
He paid $109,000 for the lot.
Holy
It was
cow.
on a.
I know exactly.
You know where the house is?
Oh, yeah.
That's what he paid for that lot.
Wow.
Yeah,
And then you moved the store to,
25th Street,
because that's when I went to work for you, had to be 70,
7, 8, 9.
I'm going to say probably close, yes, 77,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
Well, that's when I was still in Boca.
Yeah, well, then it was right after then, because you had been there.
Was I here or there?
You were in Pompano.
Okay, that was like 78.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think David Reddington was working there,
right,
and he might have got me in,
right.
like, hey, Tommy's looking for somebody, because I think Paul Mateer was still working for you.
Right, oh, definitely so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, Danny, God bless him,
Yeah.
was,
Danny's probably one of the most unique people we've ever met in our entire life, bar none.
oh, yeah, without a doubt.
He was fastest, craziest. We tell that story about fishing all night, and Danny tells his story, just some of the things he did to stay awake in the car home. Just
Oh, yeah.
enough to wake you up.
To this day,
We tell George and I tell the same story. We literally were going to sleep in the car, and I mean it was dangerous.
yeah.
And I'm driving. They've got their hands on the wheels, and I'm sound asleep, and I'm going down the turnpike.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and they got 3 guys watching me 5, 10, 15 minutes, sound asleep,
Oh, yeah.
almost snoring. And they said, there's no way he can be doing that. But they wanted me to drive because I was the oldest and the safest.
Yeah.
And would get out of the car back then, pull over the side of the road, literally get out of the car. Well, if you had a shirt on or whatever, you take your shirt off and you'd roll around in the cold, wet grass. And come back out and do it again once or twice. And then
Wake you up.
wake you up.
Yeah.
I had a situation one morning. I drove through FAU, the parking lot there on 20th Street, and I'm stopped at the red light. It was a red light there because only a couple of them on all Boca. And the guy's tapping me on the shoulder. I said, Tom, you okay? Yeah. He's got a flashlight in your face. It's a Boca policeman who knew me very well. He says, I pulled up next to you and I saw you fall asleep in the car. And the light changed, and you just eased off on your foot, and you drove across the street, and there's a double hedge right there. And I drove right into the hedge and stopped. And he said, I sat there for 10 minutes and watched you. You just slept. And everybody else was asleep in the car with you.
Oh, geez.
So nobody else had woke up either. So he's waking me up. And I slept there for 10 or 15 minutes. He let me sleep.
Right. God, those were the days. Well, it's interesting, my journey,
Right?
a lot like yours. Who would have known? Who would have thought? And I'm certainly grateful for it. And to be able to sit here and do this with you means a lot.
Well, to take you back to one story you asked before about, and I said Ed King. I didn't know anybody to ask what I should do or not do or whatever. And Ed King was in the store. And I said, I've got an opportunity to open another store here. And guys going to loan me the money to do it. Well, what you going to do? How you going to pay him back? I said, well, I'll pay him back, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, what do you got? What can you lose? You don't have your parents' house on it. You don't have nothing else to tie to it. No. You're not guaranteeing the loan. No. So maybe you will. But no, he laughed. And he says, go for it.
Right.
And that's how we did it.
Yeah.
And after many years, to this day, the only one that saved my ass at all, I guess, was Bill Kane's wife, or Joe Munson's wife,
Right.
Barbara Munson.
Yeah.
Because she kept the books and she kept everything going and she kept everything straight. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing. And paid the taxes and did all the other stuff. And, I paid them back $25.08 for a lot of years.
Right.
So, and paid them off.
Well, but and you probably didn't have any grandiose business plan or all these things, how you were going to do that. You said, you know what? I'm going to make it work. And to this day, I still do that. And it makes people crazy. But there are people that are going to succeed and they're going to figure out how to do it. There's no book to tell you how to do it.
Well, I mean, I had probably through the years, and you know this for a fact, 25 fathers come to me and say, can I buy your store? Not really. When my son's working for it and he wants to buy the store, what do you want for it? This is back during the .com era.
Yeah.
And they had unlimited millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But they wanted to buy the kid a job.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to give up my power.
Yeah.
I was happy with what I had.
Yeah.
Daddy lived for quite a few years, Mom the whole bit. But no, I was happy. I was Tom Greene.
Yeah.
I was somebody.
Yeah.
Wherever I went, I remember taking my wife, after we got married, I went to Hawaii to go fish with Kelly and Josh and Everett. And it was 1 year after we got married, and they said, come on out here, and, we didn't get to make your wedding and a whole bit. Well, we got there that night. Next morning, I woke up, and he hands me 2 airline tickets. And I don't have any idea where we're going. We went to Cairns, Australia.
Nice.
So I flew to Hawaii, went to Cairns, Australia, went down and got on the boat, the Dyfkin, went offshore to Peter Wright,
Yeah.
all right, and lived on boat there for a week. Black Marlin, heaviest line we took was 8 kg
Wow.
for November.
In Australia to the reef?
Yes,
Wow.
16-pound test.
Yeah.
That's the heaviest line we had on the boat.
Yeah.
Jocelyn had 30 pound, 15 kg. And she caught 1,000 pounder. The mate screwed it up is all I'm going to say now.
Wow.
But we caught 1,000 pounder. I caught a couple of 700, 800, 900 pounders that week that were all world records.
On 16.
On 16.
Wow.
With Peter Wright running the boat.
Wow.
And I think we caught 9 fish like that. I caught a striped marlin. They said it was 400 pounds. Yeah. I didn't want 400 pounds striped either.
Wow.
Caught some tunas and everything else. Caught a lot of fish.
Yeah.
And this, to be exact, is 32, 33 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well.
But it was an education for me. So I come back. So with the Venezuela stuff with Joe Munson, he bought a 54. He had a striker down there.
Yeah.
We were the first, I gaffed the first blue marlin ever gaffed in San Salvador. I came home and told stories with Joe Munson. I had a wahoo, and long right rigger, and short left. He was 175. He was 225.
Wahoo.
Wahoo.
Yeah.
That was that big around.
Yeah.
9 foot long.
Yeah.
No way. We had 3 blue marlin behind the boat one day at one time, fishing bonefish. Because I'd pay the local kids down there.
Yeah.
I taught them how to tie knots, how to make rigs, the whole bit. Gave them fishing classes every time I came back down. And we had these fish behind the back of the boat. But anyway, we had 3 blue marlin up, and somebody screamed, blue marlin, blue marlin. And Munson yelled, giant blue marlin. These two were 500. He was 1,500.
Holy cow.
Yeah. I mean, he was as wide as the transom of the big boat.
Good
And we
God.
had three of them in the water right behind the back of the boat.
Yeah.
Scott Hitch caught one 20 years ago with a guy he was fishing with out of Texas. And he always said he would never kill a blue marlin. They fished the tournaments and all that stuff. In fact, when he came in town, went over and fished a Bahama tournament. First one he ever fished. We won biggest fish, most fish, first place women, won every division and every bronze trophy, 5 of them, in that tournament.
Didn't you have that one hanging in the store? Wasn't that a
still
$5.95?
No, that's another one. That's from the...
I thought you caught that in the BBC.
No, that
when
was
you were
caught with Andy Belisari and Art Belisari on 50 pound. But no, this is 30 years later than that. But the fish we caught in San Salvador were enough to blow your mind.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. But that big, Scotty caught that 1,000 plus. Got video on him on the leader holding the bill for 15 minutes trying to get a hold of the boss.
Wow.
And the wife said, no, let the fish go because he'll be mad.
Wow.
They let him go. They got the measurements, the lengths, the pictures, the girths, and the fish on the numbers are like 13, 14, 15, 1,600 pounds.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And that was out of San Sal?
Yeah, but they didn't kill him.
Yeah.
So, boss man was so upset when he found out what happened. He sold the boat and quit fishing.
Did they let it go?
Yep.
He wanted them to kill it.
At that time, yeah.
Wow. Well, might have been the one you saw.
Well, but what I'm just saying is that's how big that fish was.
Yeah.
And like Scotty says, he always said we'll never kill one unless it's a tournament and a reason just to kill them. And the next problem they had was there was no certified scales. They would have to pull him in the boat, kill him,
Yeah.
and take him a long way away to get him weighed.
Yeah.
But it would have been the women's world record and the Bahamian world record. It was 11:03 was a record Sam Jennings caught.
Yeah. Remember that.
I was fishing with Andy Anderson, who ran Joe Munson's boat
Yep.
in the Hemingway tournament. I don't know the dates, but I would say it had to be in the late 80s. Joe Munson got sick, went home, sent the plane over and picked him up. Andy said, let's go offshore. We'll find one of these big old mothers tailing down the sea. And we got out there. I had a mate by the name of Emmett O'Donohue. Emmett was a good fisherman, but he was lazy.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I can still say it to his face. We had another story there real fast with Randy Fisher, who ran a 44 striker called the Buckle Up.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Emmett is in the fly bridge, looking down, screaming the top of his lungs. I've got a big blue marlin behind a horse ballyhoo with what we call a compact skirt back then, which was pink and white, slid down over the top of the cone shape over the ballot, over the horse ballyhoo. And we're shaking. I mean, this fish is so big it's beyond words. Not on the surface, just below the surface, under the bait. Fishing an 80W pen reel, 80-pound line. We had 2 mackerel and 2 ballyhoo. Andy said, let's get that fish off of the ballyhoo and get him up here to the mackerel and let him eat the mackerel. Because we got 043 wire on the mackerel.
Right.
We have 012, okay,
Yep.
029 on the ballyhoo. So we wanted the heavy wire.
Right.
We had all this time to talk. We're still going on autopilot, straight down the sea, and the fish is still there. And he'd go down, and I'd take that ballyhoo and I'd drop it back, and it'd drop down 10, 12, 15 feet, and I'd start whining like a banshee. He'd come right up behind it and stop.
Oh,
50 times.
wow.
It's a 20-minute deal.
Oh my gosh.
So we don't know what to do. So I'm trying to get him off of the ballyhoo onto the mackerel. Finally, I get him up to the mackerel. He fell off again. Can't get him back up on the mackerel, so I dropped the ballyhoo, dropped the ballyhoo, dropped the ballyhoo. And Emmett says, here he comes, here he comes. He's 300 yards behind the boat now. I get him all the way back to the boat. Get him back in for the last time. And all of a sudden, I cannot believe my eyes. You know how a billfish lights up.
Yep.
Okay. That blue marlin lit up purple neon to where he looked like a swordfish color.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to be there to believe it.
Oh, yeah.
And that tip of his bill to the end of his tail, he lit up just like that.
Yeah.
And he come right up on that ballyhoo and went, free spool. Emmett is standing next to me now. And Emmett was on the tower.
Right.
Andy was standing on the rail in the back. He's behind the wheel. I'm in free spool still. Andy says, you ready? I said, yeah. I pushed it up. Okay. I wind tight instantly. And back then we had built a set of rods that were long 80-pound, 6 guides or 7 guide rollers.
Right. Chair.
Extra long rods.
For the chair.
No, well, not even that. They're just extra long rods.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to learn stuff still.
Right.
I pointed that rod at the fish, and I was, at that time in my life, I was bowling, and I was a stud.
Right.
And I stroked that fish as hard as I could, and that rod bent double. That tip never moved. And the line goes, I'm pointing it at the fish to where half or 2/3 of the line is off the reel.
All right.
He goes limp. And he says, you broke him off? I said, I did not break that fish off. I did not have 80 pounds on him, maybe 45, but did not break him off. I wind and I wind and I wind. Here comes the ballyhoo head, the whole body, out of the mackerel, the whole body out of the water. I wind it to the boat. Emmett
Oh, boy.
had pin rigged that mackerel like he does a ballyhoo.
Yep.
He never
Forgot to run the wire through the eye of the
went
hook.
through the eye of the hook. It went through the eye of the hook, but never went through the right way. Never recessed it. Never whatever. And that hook of that of the 12-0, 13, 14-0 hook was in the center of the backbone of that Spanish mackerel, and I pulled a blob out of his stomach. The kink from right here in the fish's mouth was 5.5 foot long.
Wow.
That's how deep he had swallowed that bait when I set the hook.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
But to this day, I'll never forget this.
yeah.
I have lost 3,000-pound blue marlin.
Yeah.
That one, I had one with Kelly and Josh and Everett in Kona, Hawaii, in the HIBT. Had him on the side of the boat, and a killer pack of sharks, whales, they ate him off. And I fought one with Barky Garnsey for like 3 hours and 45 minutes on 30-pound on a Finnar 1220 light.
Wow.
And I had him in 900 feet of water from zero line on the reel, back and forth 5 times. We laughed and joked in the beginning because we'd never catch him.
Yeah.
And the whole time of the fight, by the end of the fight, we thought we were going to catch him.
Wow.
And he finally went off of that edge and bottomed me out on 2,000 feet of water.
Yeah.
But we caught him too. And he was laying on the side of the boat, tail breaking the surface.
Yeah.
And to this day, Barky Garnsey will tell you, we caught that fish. We just didn't catch it.
Yeah.
So, but that's life. They all lived. And I'm not upset to this day or any of them. I'm fishing with Tommy out one day. The sailfish are so thick you can walk on them out here. And I wanted to catch one on a light line on a Bantam 250. Yeah, my little reel.
Yeah.
Remember I set the world record snook on 2 pound?
Yeah.
I put a ballyhoo out on 2 pound. Sailfish piles all over it. And at that time, whatever the world record didn't matter. We fought that fish, and Art Belisarius backed that boat all over the ocean. And there's 1 million sailfish out of there that day.
Right.
We got that fish to the boat. Tommy Ott finally gaffed him, slid him in the back of the boat, And we're so excited, so pumped up. The fish is dead. He's like this laying in the boat. Fish jumps. As he jumps out of the boat. Because his head's in the air. The gaff's in him. Guy gets on the radio and says, guys, I ain't going to say anything. I watched you fight that fish for over an hour. Why in the hell did you throw him back in? Well, Tommy Ott was so mad. It blew his mind.
Yeah.
Just blew his mind, blew all our mind. We got 10 guys on the boat. I caught that fish again the second time.
He never broke off.
Never broke him off. I never broke him off.
Wow.
All right? Well, I learned that from snook fishing. You never go tight when you're okay. So, got him back in the boat, put him in the boat. Tommy Ott beat his gill plate in, his head in, so bad it looked like he beat him with a hammer.
Right.
And that's weighed 67.5 pounds.
Wow. On
And
two.
On two, but it was a world record. We didn't know anything about world records and all that stuff back then.
Wow.
Yeah.
67 pounds. That's amazing. Yeah. Right?
How many world records have your customers caught you? Pam Basco had the world record on 2 pound for women with white marlin in Venezuela.
Yeah.
But she tells the best story of all. Her husband was a big builder and had a big fancy house. And I said, well, how do you adjust your drag? How do you learn to bow to the fish? She said, oh, I invented something or whatever. What are you doing? She says, I practice walking up and down the stairs in the winter with a 2 pound lead on my line, or 1 pound lead, and let the rod bend and to absorb the shock so I don't break the line.
Huh.
It's got a carpet on the floor.
Right.
Go up and down the stairs, walking.
Right.
And you got to learn to bend with that without breaking the line.
Right.
Yeah, that's the stuff we did.
Yeah. Well, she was passionate enough to put the time in to do it.
Exactly.
And learn, and that's how you got.
Kelly's wife fought a yellowfin, big eye yellowfin tuna one time over there in Hawaii for 9.5 hours.
Good God.
Yeah, on light line.
Yeah.
Her fingers on both hands were bleeding in so many spots. Well, they go in the next morning. And she said, well, I'm coming too. Kelly said, well, you can't fight the fish. She said, hell, I can't. I made you breakfast. And she went back out and caught one the next day.
Wow.
Set the record on it.
God bless you.
Yeah.
Well, TG, it's been awesome.
All right, I hope you had fun.
Going back, talking about this, sharing my life with you. You know, we've done some great things. I hope we can do some more someday.
Well, there's no question we will. I'm just still mad this year I didn't get to go to Guatemala because of COVID.
Well, that's okay. We'll go. We'll get there. All right. Till next time, everyone.